there are some changes that are taking place in the industry as it relates to realtors.
Buying a home is exciting, but the process can be overwhelming. Trying to understand all of the paperwork, financing, and what you need to do can be stressful. Without knowing what you're doing or where things stand, it's hard to move forward. Or worse, you could make a mistake that costs you thousands of dollars. That's where the Get Me Ready to Buy podcast, hosted by Jeff Jones, comes in. Jeff is a realtor, coach, and entrepreneur. He helps take the guesswork out of home buying by providing you with the details, resources, and professionals that make the process easier to understand so you can successfully buy your next home with confidence. Now here's Jeff.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Get Me Ready to Buy podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about some changes in the real estate industry that impacts you as a home buyer when it comes to money. Well, not the money you're actually going to need to purchase the home, but the money that you're going to need to be able to pay for the services of a realtor should you choose to use a realtor to help you purchase your home. Let's dig into what the changes are and what they mean for you. For the past few years, the National Association of Realtors has been involved in multiple lawsuits that have continued to escalate. Earlier in 2024, the NAR reached a settlement agreement with those parties to the lawsuits and with the Department of Justice. Because of those settlement agreements that still have to be approved not until December of 2024, there are some changes that are taking place in the industry as it relates to realtors that take effect the middle of August. If you're watching or listening to this podcast or video before August the 17th, these are upcoming changes. If it's after August the 17th of 2024, these have already been implemented. And as always with lawsuits, until things are finally settled, things could still change. Now, let me give you a little bit of history. When my wife and I bought our first home, we actually just called the real estate agent on the sign who represented the seller, and we didn't have any representation representing us to make sure we were getting the best deal for us, that all of the paperwork and stuff was in our best interest. The listing agent worked for the seller, and the listing agent was paid by the seller from the proceeds from what they received when we bought that house. Now, our first house we bought back in 1986. That was a long time ago. We didn't have buyer representation. Over the course of the next several years, and maybe even then, I wasn't an agent then, I don't know when this actually took place, buyer agency became a thing. And what listing agents said is that as a listing agent, if you agreed to pay me a jar of peanuts for your service, I would take some of those peanuts and I would say I'm going to offer them to a buyer's agent to be able to be compensated for representing a buyer. That buyer's agent then would handle the purchase agreement, writing up all the contract stuff, getting it to them, because until then, until there was a buyer's agent working, the listing agent did all of the work, all of the paperwork, all of the setting up, the closing, everything else for both parties, but only represented the seller. With the buyer getting representation, that means that the buyer has an agent who is going to be loyal to them, obedient to them, looking out for their best interest, going to take care of doing their best to offer their services, whatever is needed, negotiating all those things just for the benefit of the buyer. Well, that helps you as a buyer looking for a home, knowing that you have someone looking out for your best interest. Now, fast forward a few years ago, some sellers in Missouri filed a class action lawsuit against the NAR, against their state board, their local, a bunch of people were involved, and it ended up multiplying these lawsuits that ended up going to after specific state associations, local associations, brokerages, and it was a huge, big ordeal that was going to cost millions, if not billions of dollars of money that brokerages were going to be paying for, and they would eventually come from fees that they're going to be charging to sellers and buyers. So the Department of Justice was involved in I'm giving you a brief summary. You can find all the information at facts.realtor, facts.realtor. Just a brief summary of all this says that what would happen is now when a listing agent would go to a seller to talk about getting their home sold for them, as that seller partners with a realtor to get their home sold, a realtor would negotiate a fee that they would be paid a fee, and they would agree to take a portion of that fee, and they're going to offer it to a buyer's agent as cooperating compensation for the work that buyer's agent does on behalf of the buyer. If you've bought a house or if you're in the process of buying a house or plan to, just know that your agent may be showing you may buy the very first house that you look at, or you may look at 20 houses over a year before you buy one. And that agent is constantly setting up those showings, meeting you there, taking their time, and they're not receiving any compensation until you actually purchase something. So, you may think that they're paid too much, or you may think that they're not paid enough. Anyway, buyer agents would typically be compensated because of the negotiations taken on by the listing agent when they were listing the property. The results of the lawsuits now say that the listing agent is no longer able to offer cooperating compensation to a buyer's agent through the MLS. That's the multi-listing service, which is a local database of homes that are for sale that listing agents and buyer's agents use to communicate information about properties that are available for sale. As a buyer's agent, you're looking for a home. I'm able to go in and say, hey, they want a $400,000 to $450,000 home, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths with a pool in this particular school district. I'm able to go into the MLS, put in my search criteria, and find whatever homes are for sale that buyer may be interested in. So right now, if I go and look at that, I'm going to find a number in there, a dollar amount or a percentage that says what that listing agent is cooperating with the buyer's agent to bring. And I can decide whether or not that is enough for my fee or not enough for my fee. I typically have a buyer's agency agreement with all of my buyers that says this is what my services are worth. This is what that buyer agrees to pay me for the professional services that I provide. We will attempt to get that from the seller or from the listing agent, but if not, then the buyer is going to be responsible for paying for that. And that's basically what this settlement does. It says that a seller can still offer cooperating compensation to a buyer's agent. Listing brokerage can still offer cooperating compensation to a buyer's agent, but it's not going to be part of what is shared through the multi-listing service, so that there is good distance between them. So it's nobody has fixed prices, fixed what those commissions are. And you may or may not be aware, but those commissions have always been negotiable. If a seller can always push back and negotiate with a listing agent on what they believe those services are worth. And if the listing agent says this is what my value is, then the seller doesn't want to, in the negotiations, they can't reach anything. Just like with any negotiations, if you can't reach an agreement, you don't work together. No harm, no foul. That's just the way it is. So it's negotiable. The same thing with a buyer's agent. It's negotiable. You just need to be aware as a buyer that if you're going in to buy a home, I'm going to use a $300,000 home for an example. If you put 3% down, you're going to need $9,000 in cash for that. If your closing costs, your loan origination fee, prepaid homeowners insurance, prepaid taxes, prepaid insurance, recording fees, all the different things that are involved in that, you might need another 4% kind of on average. So that could be $12,000. So you're up to $21,000 that you need. And whatever you're going to be paying a buyer's agent, if it's coming out of your pocket, you're going to need that. Whatever that amount is, whether that's $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is, you're going to need that. So you're either going to have all that cash in the bank, you're going to have a loan product that helps you with down payment assistance or 100% financing if you're a veteran or if you purchase in a USDA area, or you're going to have concessions from the seller who are going to be offering you money for closing costs, remodel. You can use it however you want to use it from those concessions. So you have to have a realtor to negotiate that for you. What I didn't say earlier is that this affects realtors, not every real estate agent. If you are a realtor, you have chosen either by the brokerage you've joined or the MLS that you've joined, you have chosen to align yourself with the National Association of Realtors and abide by a code of ethics that we all have as realtors. And you have a real estate license. Now, every real estate licensee may not be a realtor. I have a whole podcast on what is a realtor that I encourage you to go back and find. There'll be a link on this page or in the show notes somewhere that you can actually go back and find that to discover what a realtor is if you don't know. Hey, thank you for hanging with the Get Me Ready to Buy podcast so far. You need to know how ready you are to buy a home, so get your score at readytobuyscore.com. You'll pick a few statements, get an email telling you what your score is and what you need to focus on to get ready to buy a home. If I can help you in my market, which is the Mid-South, the Memphis metro area, please let me know. If you're in another market, I've got agents all over the country and in a few countries around the world. Reach out to me and I'll connect you with one of our agents who can help you get your home bought wherever you are. Now, back to the show. What this means is that realtors are bound by this new ruling that's been adopted by the National Association of Realtors and state associations, local associations. But those who are just licensees who aren't realtors aren't bound by this. They are able to work how they want to. They're not bound by a code of ethics. And you just need to know that offering cooperating compensation that a seller might give to a buyer's agent is no longer going to be evident in the multi-listing service. If I'm representing you as a buyer and you're interested in a particular property, I have to reach out and contact that agent and ask if they're offering any cooperating compensation. So let me tell you a little bit about what this lawsuit and the decisions and changes mean to you. There's a document here. Again, you can find this at facts.realtor or message me. I'll be glad to send you a copy of this so you can see this for yourself. This talks about that for a home buyer, if you have searched in the past, you may be used to having an agent show you a property and you don't have any kind of agreement in place. Well, that's no longer going to be the case. You're going to be signing a written agreement with your agent before touring a home. If you were to call me and say, hey, my cousin bought a house from you and said that, you can take me out and show me some houses. There's a house that my wife and I that we're interested in purchasing, and would you go show it to us? I said, I'd be happy to go show it to you. However, we need to have a conversation first about what that looks like. Typically today, we may meet at that property, have a conversation about it, whatever it is, however we may do it to get there. Some agents don't ever have a conversation with them. But this ruling says that we have to have a written agreement in place that spells out what my relationship is with you and what your relationship is with me before we move forward. Now, that document, signing that agreement will ensure that it reflects the terms that you have negotiated with your agent and you understand exactly what services and value will be provided and for how much. The buyer agreement is going to have 4 specific components concerning compensation. A specific and conspicuous disclosure of the amount or rate of compensation the real estate agent will receive and how this amount is determined. Buyers agents have told buyers in the past, oh, you let me represent you. I'm free. It won't cost you anything. Well, my services as buyer agent aren't free. They may not cost you writing your own check, paying me directly or my brokerage directly for the services I provide for you, but they're a cost to you. They're a cost because you're spending $300,000 for this house. That seller is going to take a portion of that money and pay off their mortgage if they have it. They're going to take a portion of that money and pay their listing agent. And that listing agent is going to take a portion of that money and pay me as the buyer's agent representing you. It's costing you. It's not free. Somebody is paying me. And we've not been clear about that as an industry. This says it's going to be clear. And here's the thing too. I want a buyer's agency agreement with you. One of the states that I'm in requires that. Another state has not required buyer's agency. So if I'm saying, hey, I'm happy to represent you and show you a house, but let's have a conversation of what our working together looks like. If I'm in a state that I'm pushing to get a buyer's agency agreement with you, just to make sure that, you get what you expect from me and I get what I expect from you, and you don't want to pursue that with an agency agreement, you may go call 3 or 4 other agents and find one who will work for you without that. So that's how the industry is operated. This puts us all realtors on the same footing that says none of us are going to be able to go and show property without having an agreement. Now, that compensation it's objective, meaning it can be $0. It can be a flat fee. It can be a certain percentage, or it can be hourly, kind of like how the legal industry does. Some lawyers will keep up with their time in 15-minute increments, and then they'll bill their clients at the end of the month for the number of hours or portions of hours that they've served for their client. Some buyers agents are going to be doing that. They might say, hey, I'll represent you for this when we buy a house, but then I'm going to charge you X dollars for every showing that we go on. We don't know what it's going to look like, and it's going to be wide open for a lot of different things, meaning you get to shop around for the agent that you want to represent you for the agreement of compensation for services that you want that agent will agree to provide to you. That compensation is not going to be open-ended, meaning we're not going to say, hey, whatever the buyer's broker is going to pay me, I'm willing to do. It can't be open-ended like that, or whatever the seller is offering. And then a term that prohibits the agent from receiving compensation from brokerage services from sources that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to with the buyer. Let me explain that for a second. There is I saw a document yesterday that a builder in a particular area, not in my market, but a builder in a market is offering like more than double what is typically seen when you look in the multi-listing service. There's not a standard, but there is kind of a norm that we see in the multi-listing service of what those percentages are. And this brokerage, this builder was offering a huge amount of compensation to a buyer's agent if they bring a buyer by a certain time. So if I have an agreement with you that I'm going to work for you for this jar of peanuts, and then I have a builder that says, you know what, I'm going to provide you this jar of peanuts. I'm also going to provide you this can of mixed nuts. I'm going to throw in a couple of tickets to a ball game. There's a hat. Here's pizza. We're going to do all this stuff for you. But if I've agreed to you that I'm going to represent you for this jar of peanuts, and that seller, whether it's a builder or not, is offering a lot more, I'm not able to take that additional. I'm only allowed to take what I can get because that we've agreed to. So it's not like I can sign you up for an agreement for a certain amount with the hope that I can find a seller who will pay me even more than that and I get the additional funds. This agreement says I can't do that. I'm only allowed to get as much as we agreed to. So you may have some buyer's agents who say, hey, where you're looking, there's the potential that I could, get even more money in there. So can we reach an agreement for this amount of compensation? And if we end up finding something that's less than that, we might renegotiate that. There's nothing that says that can't happen. That's entirely up to you and the agent that you're working with, the realtor you're working with. There's also going to be a section that says there's a conspicuous statement that broker fees and commissions are fully negotiable and not set by law. You're going to find in that document, or you should, if you're working with a realtor, it should spell out in there that it's negotiable. If they come in there and say, well, this is just my fee, this is what it's going to cost for you to work with me. That may be their fee, but that doesn't mean that's what you have to pay. If that's not what you want to pay, you can't reach an agreement with them, then you're able to go and find an agent that you want. Remember, it's negotiable. And if you have an agent or realtor who tells you it's not, you might want to consider looking at a different realtor. Written agreements are going to apply to both in-person and live virtual home tours. You're moving from another state, you contact a buyer's agent where the state that you're moving to that says, hey, I've seen this house. Can you go do a video tour for me? We're going to have a conversation about what a buyer's agency agreement looks like, and we're going to have an agreement in place. And that agreement could be for a one-time showing. That agreement is just for this house. We might agree to certain terms that I'm going to go show this property to you, and our agreement is just for this one property. If you buy it, the agreement's executed. If you don't, our agreement is terminated and over, and you're free to go and serve and work with whatever realtor you want to go work with, whether you come back to me or not. It could be just a one property. It could be for a week. It could be a number of showings. Whatever that could be, it's negotiable, and you work all those things out. Now, one difference here is you do not need a written agreement if you're just speaking to an agent at an open house or asking about their services. If you contact me and say, hey, what would it look like for you to represent me buying a home? We don't have to have an agreement in place for me to have that conversation with you. If I'm hosting an open house and you show up at an open house that I'm hosting and you walk and tour the home, you ask me some questions about the home, you don't have an agent, we don't have to have a buyer's agency agreement in place. Now, if you decide you like me and you want me to show you the house down the street that's also for sale, then we're going to have a conversation about a buyer's agency agreement and get that in place. The seller may agree to offer compensation to your agent. This practice is permitted, but I've said before, cannot be shared in the multi-listing service. MLSs are local marketplaces used by both buyer brokers and listing brokers to share information about properties that are for sale. And you can still accept concessions from the seller, such as offers to pay your closing costs. That's a summary of the agreements to the lawsuit about the changes that take place in our industry as it relates to realtors. Again, those are folks, real estate agents who are part of the National Association of Realtors. They've agreed to align themselves with that. Hopefully, this is going to eventually add to some clarity. It's going to make things possibly better for buyers. There are going to be more options for you to choose from when it comes to finding a buyer's agent, a buyer's realtor to work for you. Again, whether you want somebody for a flat fee, for a percentage, for a certain amount of time, to pay hourly, to pay for a number of showings. It's not going to be a one-stop shop, one size fits all. There are going to be a lot of options available, and it gives you, the buyer, more opportunities as you partner with a buyer's agent along your home buyer success path, that you can confidently have the agent to work for you for your best interest for what you want to pay for those services. I hope this has been helpful to you. Again, check out facts.realtor. Call me, message me. Let's have a conversation to explain anything that doesn't make sense. And just know that while we believe all of this is the way it's going to be, some other changes could take place because of lawyers and judges being involved. They have a role in our culture and society to perform, as much as we joke about all that. And know some things could change. So just because I've told you all this now, that's the latest information. That's what we have out there. And I hope this has been helpful and that you can confidently find the next home that you want so that you can live where you want to live. Have a blessed day. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me today on the Get Me Ready to Buy podcast. Hopefully you found all this information helpful to you, and it's made a little more sense out of what it takes to actually buy a home, and you feel a little bit more confident about your home buying process. Now, again, as I shared earlier, if I can help you buy a home in the Mid-South, or find you an agent wherever you are. Just reach out to me at midsouth.homes or whatever link is here on this podcast or down below in the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on a podcast, I just mentioned the YouTube channel. There is a Get Me Ready to Buy YouTube channel where you can actually watch the podcast if you'd rather do that. If you're watching this on YouTube and you'd rather listen to it, you can find the link to getmereadytobuy.com, and you'll find where you can listen to all the podcasts wherever you get podcasts. I hope that you'll also rate and review the show. There's a link here in the notes, in the show notes, or here where you can review the show and rate it so that others who are looking to buy a home just like you can find it, especially if you found it helpful. And I would love a 5-star review if this has been helpful to you. The other thing you can do is remember to get your score at readytobuyscore.com. And as always, hit the subscribe button so that you are the first to find out the latest information about what it takes for you to be ready to buy a home. Have a blessed day.